Welcome to episode 26 of the Perspective Shift podcast. This episode is about a toxic mentality that is attractive to many people in the modern age, where they would assume that they are perfect the way that they are, and that all of their flaws and issues that they face are things to be glorified and embraced instead of things that they should work on. We will discuss in this episode why so many people adopt this mentality and how it ties to the fixed mindset, where instead of working on our issues, we would take the easy way out, where we wouldn't change anything about ourselves and expect that the world should change for us. This is a big issue in modern society, and it is something that we've been seeing more and more on social media and on the news, like this body positivity movement or how people glorify their own mental illness. So we hope that you enjoy this conversation, and let's get right into it. So the topic of today's episode is something that is pissing me off, I guess, more and more with time, which is this trend that people follow in modern society, that they would assume that they are perfect the way they are. For example, if we look at the body positivity movement, where fat people would gather and just glorify that they are fat and that there's nothing wrong with it and that they shouldn't change anything about it and people should accept them the way they are. Or even how people also glorify mental illness on social media, that, hey, I have social anxiety, hey, I'm depressed, and it's something cool. There's nothing wrong with it. And people start making communities of like, we're all anxious people, not to improve themselves, but rather to just support each other as a way of like, it's normal to be this way and they shouldn't change anything about it. And once again, people should accept me the way I am. So what do you think about that?
That's a lot of angles that you kind of tackled there.
Let's just go back to this trend in general that
I'm perfect the way that I am. That also in and out of itself is a bit big. So for starters, I look at it like, which is, I guess, obvious that no one is perfect to begin with. And when people go like, I'm perfect the way that I am, it's like my response to that is always like, no, you're not. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense why people say that. Because
why?
when you say you're perfect the way you are, it makes a lot of things easier. It makes you not have to deal with all the bullshit that you've got in your life.
So it's like a lack of responsibility in a sense.
It's not this. It's just a way, in my opinion, it's just a little bit of self-defense mechanism, technically, and kind of turning a blind eye on your flaws, just like people do to other people as well. Because the second that you go like, okay, I'm not perfect the way I am, then you start realizing like, okay, there's a huge list of a lot of these things that you've got to work on.
It's overwhelming.
And it can be overwhelming, it can be too much. Yeah. And it also means that you have to get out of your shelf and start working on yourself in order to, be better than you are.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I guess a lot of people are realizing nowadays that the end of the first mountain is just the beginning of the second mountain. So when you climb the first mountain, I don't know, toward, like, you've got this problem, you're fixing it, you got there, you're almost there, whatever you want to call it. And then that just going to mean that it's the beginning of another mountain, another problem, another something to deal with. So even people who are later on in phases in their lives, they say this to themselves because they know that it's an endless drive. But I'm against it in so many ways. And I guess a lot of people are trying to take advantage of that in the sense of like, for example, personally, what pisses me off the most is, not pisses me off, but what turns me off the most in people is when say that I'm looking for people who are going to accept me for the way that I am. And it's like, no one is really going to accept you for who you are. Because at the end of the day, not just you that has the problem, it's also the other person that got the problem. So everybody got problems.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no one who's going to accept you for who you are. They're just people who are willing to deal with your bullshit because they find that your good side is better than your worst side.
But that's why I think it's a lack of responsibility as well. Like, you don't want to be responsible for your flaws or the things that you're not good at, and acknowledging that you have these flaws and trying to work on them. You just take the easy way out, where instead of working on yourself, you try to put the blame on other people. Yeah, I'm fine the way I am, but people don't want to accept me, so it's their problem. It's not my problem. So
We glorify ourselves too much. 'Cause, like, think about it like this: each person, every one of us, we all get complaints. We all get a lot of people who hate sides of us or hate parts of us. So we kind of want to glorify in the sense of like, oh, it's not me, it's them. I'm perfect the way that I am. They just don't see my potential. They don't see who I could be. And in most cases, based on my experience, it is true for them that their potential and who they actually are is not the side that they show to people. And so they get lost between the words of like, okay, is this who I am? Is this who I am? This is the side that I'm showing. This is not what I'm showing. And people are not liking this side of me because of this and this. And then start getting lost between, okay, like what's right, what's not, who am I, what's perfect, what's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they kind of get stuck in this loop of like, there's nothing that they can admit or deny anymore because they don't know what is what in the first place. And then they start just going with the flow that, okay, I'm perfect the way I am.
In a sense,
And they glorify themselves that.
There is some kind of self-denial, though.
There is. Like, there definitely is.
You're just deluding yourself and just imagining that, yeah, I am the perfect the way I am, and you're just not aware of your character traits anymore and what makes you who you are, I guess. And you just want to live in that delusion. And I think that's really dangerous, because that really feeds that idea of fixed mindset, I guess, where you don't want to try to improve yourself. Everything that you know is just the way things are. And why should you change anything? People should change, not you. The world should change to fit who you are, instead of you changing yourself to adapt to the world, which is a growth mindset, I guess. And yeah, it really feeds that fixed mindset, and it sucks the motivation out of you. Why should you work on anything in your life when you are living in that mindset, I guess? And yeah, you just live in that denial, and you are stuck in your place for so many years.
I think it's also a bit related to people not wanting to take risks. So when you start admitting, when you get into that fixed mindset that this is who I am, you know, this and this, and it's not my fault, it's everybody else's fault, and so on and so on. You kind of build a bubble around you, and you kind of want to remain in that bubble.
Very narcissistic,
because the bubble makes you feel comfortable. It is. I wouldn't call it narcissistic exactly. There is narcissistic traits in that, but I don't know. I think there's surely a better term out there that can define it better than narcissism.
Egoistic, like something.
Egoistic for sure, but I don't know. It's like subgenre of narcissism, I would say.
Sure.
But
it is something feeding your own ego. You know, like the whole thing is related to your ego, like the way you assume that you are perfect the way you are, and this whole that I don't have to change anything. You're basically feeding that idea, feeding that identity that you built for yourself, and imagine that it is perfect and there's nothing that you should change about it. So yeah, we have established that this idea of I'm perfect the way I am, and the fixed mindset, I guess, is just really makes you unmotivated to change yourself and improve. So
it doesn't make you not motivated. It just makes you that you don't need to first place.
Yeah, but
there's a bit of a difference in there.
Sure.
There's a huge difference in there. When you're unmotivated to do something or to change, it means that you've got something else going on, whether it's depression, anxiety, you know, I don't know, some past trauma, some self-sabotaging problems, or whatever it is they want to call it. But when you are deluding yourself that you're perfect the way you are, then it's not that you don't have the motivation. It's that in your beliefs that you believe that you are perfect the way you are, and there's nothing about you that should be changed.
But in a sense, that does give you this. Maybe motivation is not the right word, but you just don't work on improving yourself in any sense. And that's why there's a lot of people who spend years living in the same way, saying the same things, and no matter what you tell them, no matter what kind of advice, what kind of tip, or even if you show them that there's other ways, they don't try to change that. And in a sense, that is related to this fixed mindset, and that what I know is enough. And I think there is two things that we should talk about here that can seem like similar to each other, but they are different, which is complacency and self acceptance. And this idea of complacency is just really tied to having this fixed mindset where you think that you are good enough and you are okay with who you are, and you don't see the need to change anything because you are good enough. So why should I change anything about myself? Whereas self acceptance is the idea that you accept who you are as a person, you accept your personality traits, you accept the good parts and the bad parts. And with that acknowledgement, you keep on trying to improve yourself, working on yourself, basically cultivating this growth mindset where you're always trying to learn from the world and people around you. You could still accept yourself the way who you are, but at the same time, work on improving yourself. You know what I mean? Like acknowledging that you are not perfect and you're filled with flaws and you're okay with these flaws, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't change them. It doesn't mean you shouldn't work on them.
I agree with that, but the thing is that I guess makes it a bit more complicated for me at least is self acceptance kind of saying that okay, I did this, I fucked up here, I fucked up there, and you just like accept it for what it is. What I like, what I prefer to be honest, is that it's called at least what I in my own terminology, I would call it owning up to your mistakes and still aiming to be better. So technically if something wrong happens, or if you do something wrong, or I don't know, a situation happens where you fucked up. Instead of just accepting the situation for what it is, I always prefer to kind of own up for the mistakes that you did and try to improve that for the future. Because accepting for me or for a lot of people probably sound like okay, we're just gonna accept it for it is that okay, this is what happened, this is where things went wrong, and owning up to something and then taking responsibility and then trying to not repeat the same mistakes again. It's gonna happen, sure, that's alright, but you want to try to limit it to a certain number of how many repetitions before you learn your lessons.
But at least you acknowledge that you did something wrong or that it's
Exactly.
something related to your own behavior instead of blaming it on someone else, blaming it on the world and other people. That whenever you do a mistake, whenever you fuck up, you're just blaming it on other people. And that's where you're stuck in the state where you're not improving whatsoever.
But that's kind of the thing. I guess people nowadays are trying to have an easy way out. They're letting
Yeah, yeah.
the naive, letting their naiveness per se take control of them, to kind of guide them and show
Lack
them
of
the
self
way.
awareness as well, I would
There's
say.
the lack of self awareness. There's the lifestyle that we have. There's the food that we've got. There's a lot of factors and circumstances that
Social
we
media
have,
as well is just.
which leads us to because like say somebody went through a situation where there was meaningless suffering in it, and they couldn't find a meaning for this suffering. And some people they find it really hard to cope with a meaningless suffering or meaningless pain. So they start by kind of adjusting to the sense of like, okay, it was me against the world and the world who did me harm, so I'm gonna blame the
Victim
world
mindset.
or I'm gonna blame the people around me.
Victim mindset.
But that leads them to we're kind of going back in loops here as well. That leads them to just getting stuck into that bubble where they're not accepting the things the way they are. They're not owning up for their mistakes or for their taking responsibility for whatever it is. And then gets him to the fixed mindset where there is no growth. So just to clarify things here, since we're getting stuck in a bit of a loop here. So the only constant in life, in my opinion, is change.
Yeah.
Whether you want to accept, whether you change willingly or you change forcefully
Something is gonna force
in
you
a
eventually.
subconscious way, regardless, change is the only constant in life. You can deny it, you can try your hardest not to change, and you can always avoid it, but at some point, probably even subconsciously, because that's how we are, or that's how we function as human beings, you're gonna have to change.
Mhm.
It doesn't. I can't tell you how long it's gonna take. I can't tell you when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen eventually. So embracing change and realizing that nobody is perfect, and then realizing that you've got your own bubble, and then trying to burst out of it, which is gonna put you out in the world, while trying to forget the fear of that endless pursuit. admitting for some reason, and I'm going to go a little bit off topic here. I happen to believe that I'm going to go a little bit off topic here. I think that complacency, perfect, I'm perfect the way I am trend, is related to fear of something.
What kind of fear though?
Exactly. That's where my own belief comes in. That I believe it's related to fear of success.
Hmm.
That's related to fear of success rather than fear of failure. The reason is
How so?
exactly the reason is fear of failure was known from the past, and a lot of people have had it. But I feel like our generations and the generations that are younger or came after us, because we've got the unlimited possibility to access information, knowledge, this and this, and the fact that we know that you can always make money, and even if you fuck up, you can always manage it somehow. Which, of course, is not the same case for a lot of people, but at the same time, it is a good amount of people, in my opinion, that will start fearing that if we make it, if we succeed in this, then it's gonna mean that everything that we've did so far was wasteless, was a waste, was pointless. So the bubble that we worked hard to build around ourselves was for no point, for no reason.
Okay, it's because this whole effort that you put on this
Exactly. On this
illusion.
bubble is
Bubble.
wrong. And then second of all, if your opinion or previous opinion of I'm perfect the way I am is correct, then when you're succeeding, you're kind of belittling the people around you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
That kind
Like
of makes people
the community that you have managed to become
belong
a part
to
of,
and then get
or
out
the
of
movement,
and then become better. It's kind of belittling to them. And then because a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Nowadays, a lot of people don't want to do that.
you want to belong. So
Exactly. And then you've got the sense of belonging to that group as well, which are all factors of why people belong to this kind of trends and movement in the first place. And once you're in it, it's pretty darn hard to get out of it.
yeah.
Because
No, it's not only about
you get
you.
into it subconsciously, not realizing that you are starting to believe something like this. And then at some point, it just becomes a part of who you are until the day happens or the day comes where you're just like, okay, you know what? Nope, I'm done with this. And you decide to try a different approach, maybe.
It's basically because when you're trying, if you have managed to understand that you're stuck in this fixed mindset and that you're following some kind of trend or whatever kind of community that you don't really belong in, and you realize you need to change, when you start to change, you're gonna go through that dreadful lonely chapter, I guess. A lot of people are gonna be out from your life, they're not gonna accept you anymore, and you're not gonna accept them anymore, so you're stuck on your own. So
yeah, that's
that
scary for a lot of people.
Exactly, and
that's extremely scary for a lot.
I would say this is the most difficult aspect, not the lack of self-awareness, not the lack of motivation, because
you can facing the world in our own.
Exactly, because you could have the self-awareness, you could have the motivation to change yourself, to work on yourself, but that dreadful lonely chapter would just get stuck in where, like, I don't want to lose all of these people, all of these friends that I have accumulated through the years, and I'm close to them, and we like each other in a sense. And then because of this opinionated thing that I have changed my mind about, I'm gonna lose all of these people. So is it worth it? Is it worth it to lose this community, to lose these connections, to be more genuine to who I want to be?
It's just a lot of unknowns and
it's a lot of unknowns, and it's about a big
and a lot of what ifs as well. Because when you start thinking about losing the people around you or the people that you've managed to kind of gather in your life, and the what if would start question, the what ifs would start appearing. What if I was right all along and it was the world against me, and now suddenly I'm all alone? I don't have anyone to rely on.
Yeah.
What if this happens? What if that happens? It's all unknowns, and we as humans, we tend to try to be in control of things, you know.
Yeah.
So that can be really scary for a lot of people.
And
people don't know how to face the world on their own. That's like I feel like that's one of the main problems, issues, points that we've got going on nowadays.
I think it's a matter of, like, maybe taking it slowly, like trying to find a balance where even I myself, I don't know how to approach something like that. Like you're being in this community where you all support each other and glorify the things that you accept about yourself or whatever, and you get really stuck and you want to change, but it's a really a big decision. And I remember even when I was like, we grew up in Syria, and it's in the same way that we belong to a certain community who have certain beliefs, and when you believe these same beliefs that they do, they're gonna accept you and you're gonna raise each other up. So when you start to have different opinions and you don't want to believe in that, you don't believe in that anymore, it's really big decision and it's really hard to go through it, and it really requires courage, and many people are just not ready for that. I guess it just depends where they are in their lives. Like a lot of people are not ready to lose everyone in their lives to be on their own until they figure themselves out.
I feel like the main thing is that you learn to trust the process. You know that
When you go through it once,
it's not only this. It's like everything will come in its due time.
Mhm.
You know, you're gonna change in due time. You're gonna work on this in due time. This is gonna start working out for you in due time. It's a process that I guess it's normal for all human beings to go through.
but I think it's hard to trust the process if you didn't go through it
That's the
before.
thing.
How do you trust it?
That's the thing.
People tell you have to trust it. Trust me, it's gonna get better, but you don't know that.
So it's not trust me it's gonna get better or trust me suddenly you're gonna be happy or something.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm referring to is trusting the process. That which means that what we're going through right now is nothing
Temporary.
is nothing but a normal temporary situation.
Yeah.
We all almost every single human being went through the same situations. Almost every other human being went through
The process of change, I guess.
a certain amount of pain. You know, there's difference. It differs because the spectrum is huge.
Mhm.
But also that got a lot of factors. I started looking at all of these things as that's just the journey of life. This is life. This is this is how it goes. This is how it is for almost everybody. Sure, you might think that some people got it easier than you, or some people got it harder than you, but you don't really know that because you don't live. You don't have access to everything they have access to, and trust me, it's gonna get better. I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer, like I said, trust the process. What you're going through is nothing but a normal thing, and then the day will come when you're gonna wanna burst out of that bubble, and then things are gonna start changing, and then it's gonna suck, and then it's gonna get better, and then it's gonna suck again, and it's gonna get better,
Yeah.
and it just that's life.
I think one of the most important steps when it comes to things like that, it's since social media is one of the biggest reasons where these things start in the first place. I think a good move is to minimize this social media usage. Like, let's talk about
I wouldn't say minimize it because for me,
cut it out maybe for a while.
for me that doesn't solve the problem. For me, like what I would go with in all honesty is just
You need to be on your own.
try.
Like, with yourself.
It's not even this. Just be centered.
Mm.
You know, try to figure things out, and once you kind of start realizing who you are or who you want to be and how you like things, you know, like these specific traits, you don't get bothered as much by what happens online. It's not that okay, this is this trend and then you're gonna go left with it, and then the next trend comes and then you're gonna go to this side with it.
Yeah.
But when you're centered, whatever happens, you have to be resistant, of course, centered, know how not to.
Yeah, because
And then it makes a lot of things because even if you step away from social media and you try to minimize it, at some point you might get back to it, or that might happen in real life.
it's gonna feed these ideas.
Exactly. So instead of just always blaming it on social media, in my opinion, and being like, okay, social media, people should just try to be a bit more centered. Try to, have more faith in yourself. Try to this and that. And then once you do this and you've got the resistance that you need and you know who you are, and then by that I'm not referring to building walls around you. I'm referring to stepping back into yourself and kind of figuring out who you are. And then once that happens and you become a bit more centered, you're gonna realize that external factors not gonna affect you as much as they used to in the past.
But when you are always online, not only social media, whatever type of content that you're consuming, if you're always online, it's really hard to be centered. It's really hard to figure yourself out. So when I say minimize, it's just using technology in general less than before so that you can have more time with yourself to understand your own ideas and the things that you actually care about. But when you're always online, especially in the beginning, that is really hard to figure out. But once you become centered and you have figured yourself out, you can go back online because now you can differentiate between your own ideas, the things that you really care about, and the things that people are telling you about, and their own opinion and agendas and whatever kind of things.
But then you're gonna end up going for the right with these people. So that's first of all. Second of all, if you're always online, you wouldn't be in a phase where you kind of are trying to burst out of your bubble. You're just gonna be in that bubble and stuck in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
When you start trying to burst out of it, that's when you start kind of getting interested in other stuff. You want to learn more, you want to see more, and then that's when the shift
It's a
happens.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
The shift would only happen within you, and if the shift never happens, then there's nothing to be centered about.
Yeah, one thing leads to the next, I guess.
Exactly, exactly.
There's just different things that has to happen at the same time, and so that covers everything about this episode. I don't know, it's just something that I thought about a couple of days ago, and it's really something that pisses me off nowadays because I keep hearing and watching things related to this kind of, I guess, I am perfect the way I am, where people are just glorifying so many things that shouldn't be that normal, that they could change, they could improve, but they just decide to take the easy way out. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.